welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 490, and today's date is October 11th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief for this Saturday. Now, we understand that Russia and China, because of the sanctions on Russia, they really pushed and accelerated their program to completely de-dollarize, to move away from the Western banking system. And we see Russia right now creating their own payment system with China, creating their own rating agency, creating their own SWIFT system, and we see China making deals all throughout the world, setting up a physical gold exchange. And we can see right now they're completely moving away from the private Western central bank countries, and they want to be completely independent because they realize eventually what's going to happen as the dollar continually collapses and implodes on itself. The central bankers are going to become desperate. They're going to start a war, and they realize they need to be separate and apart from what is coming. Right now, what Russia is doing is that they're paying down a massive $52.8 billion in foreign debt as Putin de-dollarizes at near record pace, reducing external debt to the lowest since 2012. And we can see that this is ongoing, and they realize what is coming. Now, with Ebola, we see that the West African countries are looking for more aid. We have the United States and UK bringing in military soldiers. Sierra Leone is calling out for Russian help with the virus, and we see it's pretty much contained in those countries. And now Uganda is infected with a Ebola-like type of hemorrhagic type of fever in that area. And all these countries have had recent oil and natural gas discoveries. We understand that China and Russia are both pumping in billions of dollars into the infrastructure into these countries. And now we see Ebola inside the United States, where we had Thomas Edward Duncan, who was infected, who came from West Africa, who died here in the United States. And we're seeing a lot of the vaccine companies, the drug companies like ZMapp and GlaxoSmithKline, really accelerating their programs for vaccines. Usually a vaccine takes anywhere from 10 to 30 years to really create and test and make sure it's safe. And what we're seeing is they're trying to move this as hard and fast as they possibly can with pretty much no testing at all. What their testing consists of the people that are already sick, and they give the vaccine. Some people live, some people die, and that's like a 50-50 chance. But you have to remember, this strain of Ebola is 56% will die, 44% will live. And if your immune system is strong and you keep it up to date and taking the eating foods that boost your immune system like ginger or taking zinc or things like that, you have a better chance of surviving Ebola. And what we're seeing and what we've been talking about in the last couple of days, and a lot of places have been talking about this, is about vaccines becoming mandatory. And I see on the Common Sense show, Dave Hodges was discussing this about mandatory vaccines, and he brought up some very interesting points where eventually these companies are going to most likely make it mandatory. They've made other vaccines mandatory, and we see it as children go to school. To get into the school, you have to be vaccinated. Of course, if you have religious beliefs and things like that, you do not have to get vaccinated. But they've made it mandatory for pretty much everyone. And they might even take this a step forward where they might implement a vaccine ID card to make sure that you are up to date in your vaccines. And it looks like DHS is lobbying to have this information to be included on one's driver's license, and it will be a prerequisite to obtain a driver's license. Admittance to movie theater, sporting events, or any other public place, you might have to show a vaccine card to show that you were vaccinated. And we can see, even to get a job, this might also be you might have to produce this to get a job of employment. So we can see what their mission is, and from everything that they've been doing right now, we can see the fear factor is much larger than the spreading of Ebola. And we can see already Connecticut has taken precautions, and they implemented a quasi-martial law type of legislation, and there is no cases in Connecticut at this time, and they're continually pushing this. And we might see this go from state to state to state, and eventually the U.S. government will come out there and they'll say, okay, we're going to have to declare medical martial law. We're going to have to set up in each one of these schools a facility where everyone gets injected. We're going to have to make it mandatory for every single person. And again, we don't know what's in these vaccines. We don't even know if they work. They're experimental. They don't even work on the people that's out there. And I would be very, very hesitant in trying to get one of these vaccines. Okay, now in Nigeria, we understand the United States government central bankers have been trying to get into this country. They tried with Boko Haram, saying that this organization kidnapped 100 girls, then it was 100 boys, and then the Nigerian government came out and said, listen, we killed the leader. He was an imposter. The real one died in 2009, and we can see that you're continually placing a new one in its place, and they're talking about the United States government central bankers, and you can see the United States government central bankers have been trying to use terrorism inside Nigeria to get in there. They even placed military soldiers in Chad, which borders up against Nigeria, because they thought the Nigerian government were going to ask the United States government to come in and help them with this terrorism problem. So that didn't work. So what did the U.S. government do? Well, they said, listen, we're not going to buy your oil at this time. They're trying to provoke Nigeria into asking for help. Now they're doing one other thing, and the Nigerian government is slamming for them. They're saying that the United States government is denying the country access to armed purchases. And the Nigerian government is out there saying, what do they want us to do to stop the incessant terror attacks by Boko Haram on our people when they are denying us access to arms and ammunition? Yet they claim they want us to stop the menace of terrorism. And the Nigerian government is saying, well, how would they like us to do this if they're not supplying the arms? Well, I'm going to tell you how. They want the military, the U.S. military soldiers inside Nigeria. This is what it's all about. This is what they're trying to do. They already got the military soldiers in Liberia, and they're spreading to other countries in West Africa, and the United States wants to get into Nigeria, and they're trying everything they possibly can to do this. Now, we understand in North Korea the leader is completely missing. They believe he has a health problem. He has gout in his leg, but he hasn't made any appearances, and it looks like his younger sister is running the show right now. But North Korea's media says the planned negotiations between the North and the South aimed at improving inter-Korean relations have been canceled. The planned high-level talks between the two Koreans are all but scrapped because of the South's irresponsible and provocative acts. And North Korea is saying they are not getting involved in the talks at this point. Now, we see in Romania, a new U.S. military base in Romania is due to be up and running next year as part of NATO's overall ballistic missile defense system. The Aegis BMD system is the key component in the Obama administration's plan for a phased deployment of missile defense umbrella in Europe, which is intended to protect U.S. forces and NATO allies from regional threats. So we can see they're completely planning and getting ready for war. They're placing all the military assets in key positions. And again, they're building the missile shield in Eastern Europe. We see NATO getting involved in all the different areas. We see military assets being moved into these areas. We see the same thing happening in the Pacific. And we know what this is all about. This is in preparation for World War III. Now, what's very interesting, Ukrainian Cyber Berkut hacktivists claim that they have penetrated the internal network of Ukraine's defense ministry and found proof that Kiev is getting secret data from the MH17 crash investigators, including information which implies its involvement. A document posted on the website by cyberberkut.net had allegedly downloaded from the Ukraine's Defense Ministry network, dates back to August 7th, and it appears to be signed by Colonel Igor Zorin, the chief of Ukraine's Air Defense Forces. It is a report which maintains that a fragment of a projectile found together with the debris of the crash flight MH17 is in fact a damage agent of 9M38 surface-to-air guided missile belonging to the Mobile Air Defense Complex Buk or Buk M1. Photo scans allegedly depicting the fragment in question have been also posted. So it looks like they're starting to have information come out, and we don't know if this is absolutely true. They found it on Ukraine's Defense Ministry site, their network, and they're placing this now out in the open so everyone can see. And we understand that the Kiev forces were trying to get back into the crash zone to protect evidence coming out. And we also know that Ukraine, Poland, Netherlands, Australia, United States all got together and said, listen, we'll keep this information confidential. If we want this information out, we'll take a vote with all these nations, and if all the nations, if one nation says we don't want the information out there in the public, it will remain confidential. So they are definitely hiding something in regards to this MH17 flight being shot down, and we pretty much know what it is. We understand that Kiev was most likely responsible with the help of the United States government. Now, it seems like they're still pushing the agenda to demonize Russia at this time. In the corporate media, they're saying Russia is now moving tactical nuclear weapons into Crimea. Congressmen urged the president to brief Congress on the threatening Russian nuclear deployment in Crimea. They are also called on the president to suspend the NATO-Russian accord and demand the removal of all Russian military personnel from NATO facilities. Additionally, they asked the United States and its allies halt all arms control surveillance flights by Russia carried out under the Open Skies Treaty. So basically what they're doing is they are preparing for war. They're removing all the treaties, they're removing the Open Sky Treaty, and they're demonizing Russia. Now, the first thing we have to ask, where is the proof? They have none whatsoever. They're just out there telling everyone that this is what they believe. Second, why would Putin do this at this point in the game? How would this benefit him? He already has Crimea. It makes no sense. He already had the peace agreement, the ceasefire agreement with the southeastern people and the Ukrainian government. Right now they're under a ceasefire. Why would he put nuclear weapons inside of Crimea at this time? It makes absolutely no sense. It would not benefit him in any way whatsoever. And of course, this is a ploy to get rid of all the treaties, to continually demonize Russia, and this is exactly what they're doing because they realize war is on its way and they are getting prepared for it. Now, John Kerry is out there and he is saying that the U.S. stands alongside Lebanon in the fight with the Islamic State because, as we know, wherever the Islamic State is, that's where the United States government's going to go. And we understand that the Islamic State is now in Lebanon. And we realize that the Islamic State is going to be spreading to all those countries the United States needs to get into. And we've already seen video footage of the Islamic State in Libya, them running around. And we also realize now they've been reporting that the Islamic State has set up a recruitment center inside of Libya. Now, in Yemen, what we are seeing is that the tribes in Yemen have seized the office of local administration in central Yemen's Al-Baida province, and of course they're calling them Al-Qaeda at this time, but as we know, it is the tribes who are rising up who want their country back, and they're making more and more gains in Yemen. So Libya and Yemen are posing a huge, huge problem for the United States government central bankers, and eventually what they're going to do is they're going to say Islamic State is all in these countries, and we need to go after them. And there was an article saying that the Islamic State is now on the move in Libya. And of course, this is exactly what they want everyone to believe, because wherever the Islamic State is, that's where they'll end up going. And again, if you notice, the Islamic State is only going to those places where the U.S. government central bankers want to go. No other place. Now, Spain, they are going to be sending some troops to Iraq. Spain Defense Minister Pedro Morales has announced the country's plan to dispatch about 300 soldiers to help train the Iraqi army in its campaign against the Islamic State. The plan is waiting for the approval of the parliament, but they're expecting no opposition, so we're going to see forces head down into Iraq, of course, under the guise of training. Now, experts are out there, and I've said this in my reports way back, where basically Al-Qaeda is going to disappear. It's all going to be folded into the Islamic State, and pretty soon they're going to be calling it all ISIS, ISIL, or the Islamic State, and they're going to say that's running rampant all throughout the Middle East. And experts are saying that the Islamic radical movement think the terror group may merge with its Al-Qaeda mother organization soon. Together, the group would represent the greatest terror threat to the civilized world. And this is exactly what they want you to believe, because eventually what's going to happen, there will be a special event, because they need to get back into all of these countries and try to maintain control of these countries with the puppet government, with the US dollar as a reserve currency. And they need to keep this all in place, because if this is all removed, the dollar completely collapses, and it will be blamed on the U.S. government and central bankers, and they don't want this to happen. So either they take control of these countries, or they create some type of an event to cover it up, with war to follow. Now, the Islamic State is out there, and again, they're screaming that they're going to have their revenge on Russia. Why are they going to have their revenge on Russia? Because Russia backs President Assad. And you can see this is absolutely propaganda. It is ridiculous. Russia has been backing Assad for quite a while, and who tried to convince Russia not to back Assad? Well, Saudi Arabia tried to say, listen, why don't you back off? The United States said to Russia, you know what? Through our discussions, how about if you back off, let us take out Assad? And Putin keeps saying no, no, no. And you can see right now the Islamic State is a proxy army for the United States. They're out there saying this and screaming it because they realize eventually what's going to happen when they make the move to get rid of Assad. Russia is on the other side. Now, Eric Prince, who is the founder of Blackwater, is out there saying that the Pentagon should hire a mercenary corps group to fight the Islamic State. And maybe they should hire his. I think it's called the Frontier Services Group now. They have so many different names. And we can see that he would like the United States to go and use paid mercenaries to fight along the other paid mercenaries that they're already paying for, and to go in and fight Assad. And you can see Obama would have kept his promise. There's no boots on the ground. There are no Americans there. It's paid mercenaries. And this is, again, a play on words, because eventually it's still boots on the ground, and the United States is still involved in this. They're giving huge sums of money, weapons, and everything else to these armed forces. But it seems like what they want they want this to work is they want Congress to vote on this and pay out of the Congress's funds to support this type of thing, instead of using covert money from the opium fields, the poppy fields that they sell opium across the country, and other drugs and other things, or the oil that they've been stealing from Syria. So you can see they're really pushing this very hard, because they realize eventually they're going to have to put boots on the ground one way or another. They're going to have to do this, and they're going to have to make a case of why they're going after Assad. And they've been trying many different tactics with chemical weapons. He has hidden chemical plants that he didn't reveal. He has chlorine gas, and they've been trying everything, but nothing has been working whatsoever. Now, it looks like the U.S. and UK will stage a comprehensive simulation next week to check whether the country's financial and banking sectors are still vulnerable to the problem of the too-big-to-fail institutions, and coordinate their actions in case of such a collapse. The government financial leaders from Britain and US will simulate a failure of a large banking institution on Monday in Washington, D.C. to test the effectiveness of each country's banking regulations. Now, of course, they're going to come out and say this is, we have a little bit of a problem, but look, overall, they are ready. They are not going to collapse whatsoever. And again, this is all part of their illusion to make us think that everything is fine. And when that cyber attack hits the financial institutions and brings them to their knees, they can say, we weren't planning on this, that it was Russia, it was China. They really wreaked havoc on the system. Our banks were strong, and they're the ones who did it. Now, again, as we know in the past, whenever they have some type of drill, sometimes there's a false flag event that happens with it. So we have to watch this very carefully, and we have to be aware of what is going on. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.